Welcome to this brand new edition of If I Ever Live to Be. I'm your host, Whitney Till, and today I'm joined by Wes Rhea. And Wes, I got introduced to by John Ray, who's also been on this podcast, and I have been on his podcast. And Wes, I was kind of teeing it up before the show, but I thought, what better way to introduce you than how John Ray introduced you to me by email? And he said, and I quote, "The only person alive to go from professional wrestling to cybersecurity to healthcare compliance to university professor." So welcome.
Thank you, Whitney. I appreciate so much. It's a pleasure, and I really appreciate you having me today and taking some time out of your day to speak with you. And yeah, John's a great guy, and that's a good one. I think that's maybe we can figure out if that's a record or not, right?
Yes. Yes. You're also, and I didn't even mention you have a book, Off the Top Rope, from professional wrestling to the corporate world to the classroom. So amongst all those things, you're also an author. So
Yeah, and that was quite the I tell you, and I mentioned this in my book. As they say in the, I played baseball growing up and in college. I tip my cap, as they say, to people who write books for a living because that I don't know if I'll write another one or not, but that took a long time.
I hear it does. It's really it's funny because I've been told multiple times by different people that I need to write a book, and I'm a little bit like, I don't really know that it's time, right?
Yeah.
Number 1 for my time, but I'm also like, not that I need to wait till I'm 80 to write the book, but I'm like, God's not really done with me yet. I think there's a little bit more to that story before I can sit down and write a book. So congratulations
Yeah,
on
no, I
that.
appreciate that, and you're right, timing is everything, and I talk a little bit about that in my book, but, it was just something it's something, Whitney, I always wanted to do,
Yeah.
but I didn't know on what,
Mhm.
and then somebody kind of a guy I used to work with at Kennesaw State kinda he was fascinated that I'd been in professional wrestling, and he kept saying I was like, "Well, I wasn't that famous, I wasn't the Rock or anybody like that, and so he said, "But talk about your journey." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that, made some sense." And then I, pitched it to a publisher and kind of thinking, "Well, we'll see what happened." They liked it, and I was like, "Oh," like, "Can you write 10 more chapters?" And I was like, "Oh gosh, I think I can."
That's
So
awesome. Well, that feels like the perfect place to start, Wes. It's just walking us through, like, how did you become a professional wrestler? Because, I mean, even that to me is amazing. I mean, I just think of when we're children and we have those dreams and we wanna grow up and do this thing, and then we grow up and we experience life and the world tells us we can't do something, and I just feel like, you went after your dream and captured it, so I just love to hear about that journey that really got you started and took you all the way to professor.
No, thank you, Whitney. I appreciate that. And you know what? You hit on something that's so true. Is as kids, the world's a canvas, right? You think you can do all these things, and of course, when you get older, that voices start telling you, no, you can't do it, and sometimes they could be for good reasons, right? Maybe trying to prevent a downfall or a hurt or something or a disappointment. But as we get older, that starts happening. As a kid, think about I remember growing up, Whitney, I was very athletic, played all sports, whatever was in season, played them all through high school, as I mentioned, gravitated to baseball in college. And, so growing up as a kid, you'd ask kids what they wanted to be. Or I mean, at least in my time frame, people, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a fireman or a police officer or, whatever, and I was always, I want to be a professional baseball player or a professional wrestler. And I'm just here a little kid, but I just love it was just that good versus bad, sort of
Yeah.
thing, that I was a Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, person growing up and all that. So, always was intrigued with it, watched it, and really thought too much about it as I started getting older. And then I had as I was getting out of college, I was fortunate enough to get, I guess you could say fortunate, a professional baseball tryout, and it was what they call a free agent tryout. So it means you're
Yeah.
not good enough to be drafted, but some people still think maybe there's something, so they invite you in, and it didn't work out. And so I was really wanting to, I still want to do something athletic. Luckily I had graduated. I went to Kennesaw State University. I graduated with an undergraduate degree, and just again was not ready to. I still wanted to do something athletic. I ran into a couple guys I had grown up with, and they had gotten into the world of professional wrestling. Professional wrestling was starting to change in that late 80s, 90s. When I was growing up, it was just these big old guys. And, as we got into the late 80s, early 90s, they started being a little more athletic, build, and that sort of thing than what maybe they were in the 60s and 70s. And they were pretty. Now, just put in perspective, I'm about 6'2", and about that time I was about 170 pounds, maybe. And if anybody knows anything about professional wrestling, that's not going to cut it. But my friends were, around the 6 foot, 6'2" range, anywhere from 200, 230 pounds. And I was very intrigued with how they got in. I started asking a bunch of questions, and then they started, "Hey, yeah, you can do this. Yeah, the weight, camera adds, TV adds 10 pounds to you." And, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I can do this."
The only time ever that that's been viewed in a positive light, because all the rest
Exactly.
of us are like, "No."
Exactly, exactly. So, and so back, Whitney, back then, so professional wrestling is very different from what it is today. It is sports entertainment. They've
Mm,
been out in the open about that, and now there's a lot of opportunity. I'll say a lot, but the opportunities are a little different to get into professional wrestling than when I was coming up. So when I was coming up, you had to kind of know somebody who knew somebody. It was still more about what I would call kind of a closed
sure.
business, right? So, and so they connected me with someone who then connected me with someone. And the guy was like, "Okay, you can come up and do what they kind of call a tryout." So I was so excited. And I thought, I get to go and do all these cool moves and all these things I've seen on TV. And so I go up, it was a Saturday afternoon, never forget, Whitney. And literally, I got beaten up for free for about an hour and a half. You know,
Oh,
it was- and then after about the first 15 minutes, I said, to myself, kind of what I've done throughout my whole life is, what have I gotten myself into? I'm an only child, so I didn't have any
no.
brothers or
Are
sisters.
you?
I didn't have an older brother or sister to see them do something and they go, "I'm not going to do that because they got in trouble," or something like that. So I had to
Yeah.
kind of, okay, did this. Man, I shouldn't have done that. Right. So, that was what happened. And after about 15 minutes, I said, just use your athletic ability and, see what you can do. And this, they can't do this forever. They got to stop eventually. and so we got through, and I started getting better, I guess you could say, throughout, because it was just, slam, slam, run. People don't understand sometimes running those ropes and hitting them can, woo, if you don't do it right, you don't fall right. Things can
Yeah.
happen. I know people have some perceptions, but it's a little different. People aren't trying to kill each other, but they're it can be some contact for sure. So I got done and I was saying, okay, well, I guess I'll go home, and I guess time to go do something in the real world, as they say, right? And when they forget your name in the world of professional wrestling, they call you kid. So as I heard, "Hey kid," and I was like, "Me?" I was like, "Yeah, come here." And he said, "Hey, asked me. I think I fudged my weight up to 175, just to give a little extra." But he then said, "Hey, I saw you got some athletic ability. If you do good out there, if you can get up to 200 pounds, I'll train you." And I was like, "What?" I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Dumb and Dumber before or not, when Jim Carrey says, "What's the chances of him and Lauren Holly's character going out on a date?" And she's like, "1 in a million." He's like, "You're saying there's a chance, right?" So
Yeah.
that was kind of me, right? So I went back, put the work in. A good friend of mine, his parents owned a gym here locally in the Marietta area. He was a competitive bodybuilder, so he helped me nutrition, start training right, and got up to 200 pounds, and actually wanted to make sure I got to 205 just to be safe. And then I called him back and went up there, and he kept his word. And next thing I know, I'm training. 6 months later, I'm in a TV studio and a Fox affiliate in Chattanooga, Tennessee, getting ready for an opportunity. So, yeah, it was the good Lord was with me, looking after me, because it definitely was, some chances there. I look back when, man, if one little slip or fall the wrong way could have, really caused some problems or injuries possibly. But yeah, it was, that's kind of how it started. And I was able to, through about the late 80s and about the mid 90s, and got a chance, Whitney, to meet a lot of different people I wouldn't have met as Wes Ray, and I got a chance to do some things that I really enjoyed doing, which was giving back, doing some charity work, getting a chance to, you know, uh, help others, hospitals, meet children who, you know, maybe weren't in the best of shape for, which was very sad for a little kid, but you kind of, it's kind of cool that you, for whatever reason, you maybe made their day for that little bit, which, you don't think about that sometimes, but it was a, I wouldn't trade it. My body says today, maybe you should have traded it, but I wouldn't. And it was a great opportunity to meet some really great people. I got a chance to meet Muhammad Ali, who was someone that, you know, got a picture of him, throwing a punch at me and the cool things like that. And just, really got a chance to help some folks along the way. And then my body said, okay, you're done. You can't do this anymore. So I went back and got my MBA, and then, started working customer service, started at the bottom, went from being in front of thousands of people, getting yelled and screamed at to, all of a sudden kind of getting yelled at, screamed at from a different perspective on the phone. And then just, started working my way up, and ended up falling into IT, which was a great career move for me. Didn't I think again that was the good Lord kind of guiding me there when I didn't see it. And I graduated my MBA and then fell into cybersecurity and healthcare compliance when all that stuff started getting kind of hot and mandatory. And went back and got my JD, my law degree. And I'm very big on learning. I think that's very important, and helping you to grow your career. And that's kind of went from there.
What I'd love for you to speak on, because just from looking over your content and learning a little bit more about US, I know this idea of really hard work and pushing through and perseverance is interwoven throughout your story. And I'd really love for you to speak on, because I feel like there are, maybe there's three different sets of people. There's the person that just, and enough is never enough, right? There's just place and job to job because it's just never enough, right? They get bored easily,
Yeah.
or there's no clear path. I
Mhm.
think there's the person that appears like they have it all together. Now, maybe they really do. I mean, there are those people who go to college and get the job and they're in the same place for 30, 40 years and then they retire. And it, in general terms, is this very linear
Mhm.
path. And then I think there's your story of, this is where I got started. And while it looks like it's this weaving path that of disconnected points, they're actually all very connected points, because your faith in God directed those points, right? They all led up to this. I keep referring it recently to like this tapestry, where if you looked at the back of a tapestry, it's like all this weird yarn and knots, and it
Mhm.
doesn't look like it makes any,
Right.
but on the front end of it is this beautiful picture. And so I would just love for you to speak to that, because I mean, I don't know, you can say I'm right or wrong, but I feel like you probably got some pushback along the way too, of like, what are you doing? Are you sure you're making the right choice? Because you were here and now you're here.
Hey, Whitney, I couldn't say any better. You said it, that was perfect. You're exactly right. I mean, I look back, and that was part of, I think, why when it was intriguing to write this book. Maybe it might help somebody else along their journey. And I'm an
Yeah.
interesting breed with some of those things you just mentioned, because I do get bored, and that's probably why you see. But I'm not one of those. It's if you look throughout I stayed in thing. It wasn't like, oh, I did this for 6 months and said I'm done with that and moved on. Like I was in wrestling for, I would love to have finished off my career in wrestling, but my body, you just
Yeah.
those ones who've been able to stay in it for a very long time have been, it's very fortunate that you can do that, right? I just couldn't. Um, but you know, I think taking what you learn from these different areas, right? Like look back and when I was in wrestling, I learned that, presenting, you're in front of people. You got to be comfortable in front of people, be in front of a camera, negotiation, working with others. I mean, being in a team from playing sports, and wrestling's very similar. You do have to work with someone, so you don't hurt each other and that kind of thing. And so I was able to take that and move it into, again, I knew I wasn't going to start off at the top, but it worked into customer service. And again, using those skills worked out very nicely. I was comfortable with somebody yelling at me on a phone. Well, it's not what you want to do the rest of your life, but it got me in the door, and then it opened up other opportunities that then led. And you're exactly right. Some of those I didn't know that the good Lord was guiding me that way at the time, right? But it kind of worked itself that way because of, and I look back at some things that happened where I'm like, oh, why did that happen? Or why did that not work out? But then I'll just give you a real quick one. I had an opportunity to get into a CIO role, Chief Information Officer, which at the time was a goal of mine, and I got it, and I was like, but then within a year, the company was sold and different things happened, and they had duplicative efforts, and I was like, oh, why did this happen? But it opened the door to Kennesaw State that may not have opened,
Yeah.
if that door hadn't have closed. And I know that's always tough sometimes. So I think, I really admire people who can stay at a company, 30 years. I really do. Because there's times where I always, why didn't I just stay put and not, you know, but, but that's just kind of me. I always don't, I just kind of don't want to look back, Whitney, and
Yeah.
go, "Man, I should have tried that." That was one of the main things. One of the main drivers when I did wrestling. I remember that first match I had. I said, "If this goes nowhere else, I did it."
Right.
I didn't want to be 60, 70 years old, and going, "Well, hey, I could have been a professional wrestler." And like, "Well, were you?" "Well, no, I wasn't, but I sure could have been." I didn't want to do that, right? I didn't want to. So yeah, have I probably I'm sure I've made mistakes along the way, or there's some opportunities. Like, why didn't I go for that? Or why did this happen? But I really feel like those skills, and that's what I'm hoping in part of my book too, is you can transfer them, right? Help people understand.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to you got to have a leap of faith. And I know sometimes it's easy to get comfortable. I get it, you know, but if you want to get somewhere, you may have to take that steps along the way, but use those skills that you've been given and the good Lord has given you. And I have to put that faith and that trust. And I know everybody's situation is different. I've been very blessed along my way. But yeah, I think just really trying to take those skills you've learned, connect those dots, see how you can use them in other areas, and never discount what you've learned along the way. I know that when I was teaching at Kennesaw State, I would try to help students with what they wanted to do in life. And I would always hear somebody saying, well, I'm working part time at the grocery store. I'm just being a bagger. I'm like, whoa, don't just say you're a bagger. Let's talk about what you're doing. You're helping
Yeah.
people, and let's look at those skills you learn. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do. And connecting those dots, even though they kinda went in a different direction along the
Yeah.
way.
I love that though because I think it feels like we've gotten away from that, right? Of we have to have the glamorous job. I feel like we see everything that's going on online, I guess in
Mhm.
general, just put that umbrella over it. And it's like kind of the nitty-gritty dirty jobs is where you learn so much
Mhm.
about life, like bagging groceries. I mean, I worked in a shoe store and it was everything from dealing with feet and taking out trash and vacuuming the place and dust.
Right.
We've gotten rid of that. We just wanna go into, that corporate gig and make 100,000 a year in our first year, and it just doesn't work like that.
You're so right, Whitney, it doesn't, and again, again, we're all different generations. I didn't grow up with all this we have today, but I was fortunate enough that during my that was all coming around, so I was able to, of course, pick it up. But I do think there is that, like you said, I think sometimes that fear of missing out. People think I'm gonna miss
Yeah.
out on something, or my friend's doing this, why am I not able to do that, and that kind of thing. So I think it's, got to be careful. You want to run your race, and there's nothing wrong with a little healthy competition for sure. But I think, you just want to run your race and not get caught up too much in all the other noise and that's easy to do. I really go back when I do talk to a lot of different folks. I really can't stress enough how sports helped me a lot
Mm.
up and in high school and college and playing at a competitive level because you do have a you do learn how to kind of tune out the noise. And even in professional wrestling, you had to do that, and so, so learning those things, I think, can translate very nicely as you get into the corporate world. But yeah, I think what I see a lot though, not, no, I shouldn't say a lot. I think it's the patience, right? And I talk about
Mm.
that in my book. I think, like you said, Whitney, people think I'm going to come out of college, and unless you're going to be a doctor or something like that, you're not going to go right to the C-level position, and it takes some time. And I think people don't realize and that maybe because we're in such a immediate society, right? With Facebook and Instagram and getting all this information so quick that they think a job's got to be that. And it takes time. It really does. And maybe, maybe not 20 years, but it may take a few years before you can start really getting up that ladder.
And that's interesting that you say that, and I'd love, this question, so I'd love if you listen and capture this for us. I just went to last night, and the I lose last.
I'm losing you, Whitney. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll wait and see if it comes back. I think it's
Yeah.
the weather.
Yeah, yeah. I know. It always seems to
There
happen.
we go.
There we go. Now you're back.
Okay, I know, it's fine. I'll edit that. I'll tee this up. So, the question I kinda thought of just as you were going through that and tuning out the crowd, because I went to my first Braves game in probably 8 years last night.
Okay.
We're not doing the best season, but that's not the point. Remember sitting in the crowd and hearing all these noises, right? Like, you've got conversation happening, people name their players. There's some down in the next aisle, and I swear they watch something on their cell phone the entire time.
Right.
'Cause I can hear it, right? I'm like, something's playing somewhere and it's not the game. They're, like, over on their phone watching something. And then I've
Mhm.
got people, in the rows below me, and they're checking Instagram, and there's so many sounds. And I was really curious of, like, I would love one day, this will probably never happen, but just to step out on the field, right? Like, to almost be a fly and hear what the players hear, because I literally had this thought last night of, like, you just have to block all that out. I mean, there's lights and there's music and stuff is changing and people are yelling, and I just thought to myself, I wonder how they train to just block all that noise out. And you've had that experience, so I don't know if you can, like, encapsulate that in a description, but what is that like, and what is that training like to kinda maybe turn your brain off?
Yeah, no, that's a really good one, Whitney, and, you're right. Unfortunately, the Braves aren't doing too well this year, but, yeah, you know what? I think what happens, at least in my experience, I think you kinda learn it along the way, that, the focus. You get focused on what it is you're doing, and it's not that the crowd's not back there, but you're not that's not what you're focusing on or what you're real if that makes sense. You can kinda
Yeah,
hear the noise and all that, but you are, focused on what it is you're out there doing, and a lot of times that becomes a motivator, at least it did for me, in the world of professional wrestling, whether you're a good guy and you're getting yelled, cheered for, or you're a bad guy and getting screamed at, that's okay. You want that if you're a bad guy, and then same with you're playing a sport. If things are going well and you want that to kind of help that motivation, but from the concentration perspective or the focus, it's that. And I've always found it interesting with too that, and I hope there's not any tennis players or golfers that take offense to this statement or anything, but playing baseball, you're trying to hit a 90 something mile an hour fastball and people are yelling and screaming. And I always thought it was so interesting when playing tennis that everybody had to be quiet, when they're hitting the tennis, I mean,
no.
there's nothing much more than trying to hit a 90 something mile an hour fastball and you got about 2 seconds to react to that. But I've always thought that was interesting. And when I would even mess around playing tennis, again, that didn't bother me because of, again, what I'd already been used to from that perspective. But it's just, I think it's just a learned behavior as you kind of be able to tune that. And I think the same happens when you're at a job and you're presenting or you're speaking. You got to, again, know your audience, but you're gonna again, you can't get caught up in that and kind of tune. I know, like, especially if you see somebody like you said, not, if a baseball player was looking over going, "Hey, that person's on their phone. Why aren't they watching me?" They don't notice those things, right?
But I love that. I think that that speaks to what we were talking about, is that you allow in and to speak to you, because, I mean, I know we're not all baseball players, but I feel like we still have that, right? We still have people yelling at us and they're
Yeah.
saying, like, "Throw faster, throw softer," and it's like,
Right. Yeah.
ultimately, you have to make that decision because you got 30 seconds to make it, and you gotta throw the ball and get it out of your hand.
Exactly, and like you said, even in a job, you got people, or if you're looking at, people
Yeah.
telling you what to do, maybe, and, there could be some good voices, and maybe there's some people who aren't for you, you know? I think that's so important to have those trusted people around you and your network of people that, you can bounce those things off of. And at the end of the day, like you said, you have to make the decision, and it's good to take some input from others. And especially if you've seen somebody be successful and somebody, I always have, I think mentors are really a great something for people to have, and people they can trust and people they can learn from. And then again, take what you do and kind of make it yourself. You don't have to try to emulate someone, but take some of those good things, and I think also learn what not to do is very
Yeah.
important.
I love that. So, in our last couple of minutes here
Yeah.
was for you to dive a little bit deeper into how, and you can go as far as you want into this and share what you would like to share. But I just love to hear how faith was just played, from almost like day one to where Wes is today.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I appreciate that. And that was part of what I wanted to get across in my book. Whitney, faith has always been, I know everybody's different in how they, how their faith. I've not been one to. I'm fine with sharing my faith. I've not been one of those to just try to push it down someone's throat or anything like that. But I think I've throughout my, especially looking back, I look back going into wrestling, and um, there was time, and I've seen people get really hurt. I mean, I've seen people break
Yeah.
bones. I've seen someone be paralyzed, and so I know. And I look back and go, then that was the good Lord looking after me. I mean,
Mhm.
there could have been one little slip. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, people aren't trying to kill each other, but when a 300-pound person falls on you, that's still 300 pounds. you
Right, right.
and but I look back and going, gosh, the good Lord was looking after me. And
Yeah.
as I got older, my faith became more and more, and something that I do go and share and speak at some local churches in the area when I have an opportunity to do that, which I enjoy doing and giving back. I think that's what the biggest thing I've probably learned is giving back. We always, hey, it's all, hey, me, well, hey, what can you do for me? But I've learned that as long as you can give back, that's important, and that journey has been very, I think been, it's still ups and downs, right? It's not always a straight path or anything like that. I think one of the verses I love a lot, Whitney, is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and He will guide you, make your path straight, right? So I think that's something that's my path is went a little different, not so straight, but I think having that faith in others to lean on and people you can talk to. And I've been fortunate enough in some companies throughout my career to even have where we were able to have Bible studies at lunchtime without any problems with that and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So I think just surrounding yourself with like minds and people that you can learn from and things of that nature is very important. But it has played a big role, and that's one thing I wanted to kind of get across in my book that you you know, he'll good Lord will look after you. It may not, your path may not, and I think the biggest thing I had to learn the hard way, and probably a lot of people, is it's not always on our timetable.
Patience word. It's not
Exactly.
one of my favorites.
So, and so I think when I look back, there's things that happen for reasons and things of that nature. So,
Yeah.
but he'll look, the good Lord will look after you and put him first in your life. And however that is that anybody does that, some people like getting up and standing and raising their arms and everything. And that's great. Everybody, I'm a little more private when it comes to that, but I have no problem sharing it with people and let people know that, he played a big role in my life, and I've been, blessed throughout that. Throughout.
Yeah. Well, my final question that I ask every guest, and I tee it up because I've kind of been through several. I mean, I've had various podcasts over the years, and so when I started this one, I called it "If I Ever Live to Be," which is kind of like this open-ended question, and each guest gives me something I aspire to. Right? I'm just taking like little life nuggets, and I'm like, yes, I want to be that, and it's interesting because most of them are ongoing things. So one of my favorite examples that I like to give is an episode that I did with Matt and Buffy Payne because I called that "If I Ever Live to Be Brave." I think brave is a decision that we make every day, right? It's
Yeah.
it's not a
Mhm.
destination that we just show up on. That's something that we have to choose every day. So my question, Wes, is what do you want to live to be? What do you want to be remembered for in this world?
That's really a good one, Whitney. I think I really enjoy helping people, and I hope somebody remembers me as, yeah, Wes was, he always took time, to help and, was a good person, however you wanna define that, right? But I really enjoy helping people, and that's one of the main reasons, again, of the driver I was writing the book was I really hoped that it would help somebody. I figured, that was what I was at school and I was teaching at Kennesaw State. That was something that I felt like, you have a class of 50, 60 people, students, and, you after a while, you get not everybody's gonna be hanging on every word you're saying and all that kinda thing. I was a student myself and at one time, but I felt like if there was somebody, if I helped somebody, I said, I got something from that, or maybe I should go in this direction, or so it's really about, I think, if somebody would just say, he was always willing to help and was always there to help somebody and taking the time for that. That would be what I would hope to be, I think, best remembered for.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that and feel that in our conversation.
Ooh, thank you.
No, thank you for joining us, and I wanna give the opportunity, Wes, for people to reach out to you, get the book. How do they
Yeah.
connect with you? What's the best place?
Yeah, no, thanks again, Whitney. I really appreciate this. It's been a pleasure. It's really great to meet you, and then really enjoyed our conversation. You do a
Same
wonderful
here.
job. So thank you so much. But yeah, the book, as you mentioned, is Off the Top Rope: From Professional Wrestling to the Corporate World to the Classroom, and Journey in Faith, Career Transition, and a little bit of luck. So it's offthetopropebook.com. So it's just all one word, offthetopropebook.com. It's my website, and people can go there and get a chance to see maybe some cool pictures and learn a little bit about me and some of the folks that helped me along the way. It's also gives opportunity if they would like to purchase the book. It's got links to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and book signings. I just had a book signing this past week, and I've got one coming up in September. So I'm doing about one or two a month through the rest of the year. So I'll put those out there as well, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. You can just look me up by my name, Wes Ray, and LinkedIn. If anybody ever wants to connect on LinkedIn, it's Wes Ray. I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn as well too, and if I can help in any way, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah. And where are your book signings are local in the Atlanta area or
Mainly I was in Greenville, South Carolina in June. I'll be in Chattanooga, Tennessee at the Hamilton Place Mall in October. I was in Asheville, North Carolina last year, but mainly one I've got one coming up, I believe, in I think it's called Half Price Books. It's coming up in September. They're on Johnson's Ferry Road in Marietta, and then I'll be at
Yeah.
in October, I'll be in Chattanooga, and then I'll be at the Barnes and Noble in Alpharetta, Georgia, at the end of October as well. So mainly the metro area. Every now and then I'll get one that's maybe within a driving distance, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, something like that, Florida. But most of them are local in the area. Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Awesome. Wes Ray, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Whitney. I really appreciate it, and thanks again for having me. And have a great day. And I really appreciate it, and I hope everybody listening out there enjoy your journey and be the reason someone smiles.
I love that.